Why don't all osteopaths wear barefoot shoes?
It's a really good question. I don't really know because it may have...
Must stack up.
It does. It just makes so much sense. And I've talked to osteopaths about this before, and I know a few that wear minimalist style shoes, but I don't know. I think maybe people just haven't got the staying power to kind of be asked constantly, what's that on your feet? so I have maybe.
How did you first discover barefoot shoes? What happened?
There used to be an annual conference that was organised by the Institute of Osteopathy. It was called the Back Show. And when I first qualified in 2007, I went along to the Back Show. And I'd just come out of a lecture with Maldon, who's an osteopath, a Czech practitioner, and a big barefooter. And his company at the time, Primal Lifestyle, had a stall at the show. And as I got close to the stall, there were all these peculiar shoes sat there. And I'm a salesman's dream because as soon as kind of someone says, brilliant, I'll have 10 of them. Do you know what I mean? So I listened to all the sales patter. He told me about kind of the shoes and the benefits of them. And I thought, all right, what's the worst that could happen? I'll kind of spend some money, but I'll have a funky pair of shoes at the end of it.
Do you remember how it felt when you first put them on?
I remember all the sensations, getting on the train, because as soon as I bought them, I put my trainers in my bag and they were like a sand-coloured pair of classics. Do you remember those ones?
Yeah.
And I remember walking on the train and kind of like the edge of the train as you go through the door, feeling the...
Oh, so you wore them home?
Yeah, I wore them home.
Right.
Yeah, and kind of feeling like the sensations of the textures of the floor on the train and in the train station and things like that. I remember kind of thinking, whoa, this is kind of weird. I kind of like this, That was kind of the big sort of first impression with how much I could feel with them on.
Yeah, so it must have kind of felt right for the osteopath in you, which we'll get onto. It must have just fell into place and made sense immediately.
Absolutely, and it fitted in with the lecture that he'd given that was on kind of sort of primal lifestyle, paleo stuff, kind of anthropology and the evolution of the human body. It just matched with that. It made sense. It fit with the osteopathic principles that I just kind of, graduated and was sort of, very enthusiastic about. And I just thought, oh, why haven't we done this before? This is brilliant.
So did you have any sort of challenges to your body when you'd been wearing them a little while? Because obviously it must have activated some muscles that you weren't used to using.
I didn't notice any massive challenges to my body, to be honest. I mean, I hadn't really sort of run before that. I'd played a lot of rugby and continued to play rugby for a while after kind of that transition. But obviously I wasn't playing rugby in them. But I started running around that time. And I think because I'd only just started running, it kind of wasn't an issue there. I think if I'd have been a runner for a long time, then making that change would have been a problem. So I didn't notice any problems like that. But constantly getting stopped on the street, in every coffee shop, in every petrol station, going, what's that on your feet? At first it was a novelty and it was fun to kind of explain it to people. And then after a while, it's like, I just want to get coffee.
But as an osteopath, that's almost like wearing them is that's a conversation starter. And it's almost like leads into what you do for a living.
It does, but a lot of the time people don't know what I do for a living. They come in and say, you're the back man with the weird shoes.
Right.
And that's kind of become my local niche, really. They don't know me as Jamie or Jamie the osteopath or anything like that. I'm just the back man with the weird shoes.
Yeah, because I suppose by living around here in Maldon, it's quite a closed community and everyone knows everyone else.
Yeah.
So it must be good for your business because you have a bit of a reputation and people associate you with the footwear.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I do kind of get noticed. I stopped noticing it after a while when people obviously might come up and talk to you, but other people might just go, I've seen his feet. They kind of just point and kind of... I stopped noticing that after a while, but it drove my wife nuts for ages. Those people are pointing at your feet,
So talk to me about osteopathy then. Let's get a background of for people who don't know, let's get a background of, in a nutshell, what osteopathy is.
So osteopathy is like a system of manual therapy that tries to optimize the way the body moves. So your kind of way of accessing the body is to kind of physically move it around, but by kind of optimizing that way that the body moves and the shape of the body and the structure of the body, you let it kind of function at its best.
Putting your osteopathy hat on, what happens to your body when you put a pair of FiveFingers on your feet?
It's a kind of a question that I dread to answer, because I've done lectures on this that have kind of spanned like several weeks.
I know. Yeah, exactly. And I appreciate it's going to be different. There's going to be a different response for different people depending on how messed up you are to begin with, I guess.
Yeah.
But kind of in a sort of general sense. So how does it change your posture? And
one of the sort of founding like principles of osteopathy is that structure and function aren't two different things. So it isn't kind of the shape of it affects the way it moves, or the way it moves affects the shape of it. The shape of it and the way it moves are the same thing. You know, like a ball and rolling aren't two different things. You know, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
So when you're kind of looking at the shape of the foot, anatomically how it's made up, physiologically the nerve supply, the blood supply, if you kind of alter the environment that you're using that foot in, it compromises its ability to function. You know, there's kind of no other way around it. You know, if you alter it, it's not going to work in the same way. The body's going to kind of have to compensate to it being in that different environment.
Right.
So there's a sliding scale to that. You know, there's some kind of, you know, conventional shoes that are, you know, going to affect it, but not as badly as kind of, you know, the big pointy high heeled, you know, things. And then, you know, you've got a Vibram FiveFinger that, even though it's kind of the most minimalist one that you can get, as far as I'm concerned, it's still, you know, it's still kind of keeping your foot warm, you know, and your body's got thermoregulatory mechanisms. Should be doing that for you. You know? So, I mean, that's one of the things that you see with people that have kind of worn thick socks and shoes for a long time. They get home, they put thick socks and slippers on. You know, they're always keeping their feet warm. So the priority of the body isn't to send more blood to the feet, because it's warm already. It doesn't need to. But, you know, with that blood comes, you know, white blood cells, nutrients. So, you know, you kind of see these kind of corpse-like feet on people, you know, that are otherwise very healthy, just because their feet are always kept in this kind of warm, slightly moist sensory deprivation chamber, where there's never any kind of input or requirement for the foot to do anything.
Yeah, I guess any part of your body that gets a richer blood supply is going to have a healthier life.
Yeah. You know, kind of your hands and feet are kind of, in terms of the blood supply and the nerve supply, they're the same. You know, we should kind of have, apart from the opposable thumbs, to, you know, you should have the same dexterity in them, but because they don't get used, we don't, you know, kind of, you can barely, you know, that exercise where you get people to kind of lift their big toe and their small toes, most people can't do that, you know, whereas in the hands, you know, you can kind of do all sorts of things.
Yeah. I suppose you could, if you asked a child or a toddler to do that, they'd have a much better chance than if you ask an adult who hasn't had to do that for like 30 years of their life.
Yeah, and one of the cool things, if you watch a very young child like that's learning to walk, if you watch their toes when they're taking their first steps, they're kind of moving around. They're feeling the way.
Yeah.
And that's how we learn to walk. That's how we balance. And kind of, as adults, we kind of we lose that quite quickly. As soon as we're kind of putting a pair of shoes, you start to kind of lose that, and you start to kind of.
And there's a whole nerves thing as well, I guess, because your nervous system is so rich down there that when it always makes me laugh when I see people on holiday and they take their shoes and socks off and get on the beach, and suddenly it's like they're walking on spikes.
Yeah.
But then after a day, they can walk on the beach and forget they're doing it.
It's like when you wake up and you've had your eyes shut, it's been dark all night, and you open your eyes and the light kind of blinds you, and then within a minute you're fine and the light hasn't dimmed at all. It's just your brain's recalibrated to, oh right, this is kind of, you know, the sort of wavelength we're working on. And it's the same with your feet. If it hasn't had any sensations, then the sensations it gets to start off with are going to be overwhelming until it kind of recalibrates a little bit.
So one of the questions I get asked a lot, which I'm sure you get, is, can't you feel stones in those?
Yeah.
And I guess, yes, you can, but if you wear 3 millimeters or 3 centimeters of rubber between the feet and the ground, then it desensitizes your nervous system.
Yeah. Well, it's like picking up a cup of tea with your hands. It's like you don't use a glove for that. It's like, well, does that not feel hot? It's like, well, yeah, it does feel hot, but it's not burning me. You know, it's fine. It's just a sensation, and sensations are important. You know, they tell you how to move your body and operate in the environment that you're in.
So I'm guessing as an osteopath, you obviously get a lot of people come into your clinic who are curious about your shoes and they ask the questions. So I guess one of the questions they might want to ask is, how long is it going to take me to get used to wearing a pair of those? And I know it's a bit of how long is a bit of string.
Yeah.
But in general terms, what would your answer be?
Yeah, how long's a piece of string? It depends kind of, it's like asking someone asking how long will it take me to get fit? It's like, well, what do you mean by fit? Do you want to run marathons, or do you just want to kind of, walk to the shops and back home?
That's a good
analogy. Yeah. And what's your starting point? Are you kind of fairly fit and active already, or are you kind of, sitting in your sofa all day? So if someone's kind of reasonably active and they've not kind of got any sort of mechanical issues with their feet, then if they're willing to kind of do some exercises, then they could put on a pair of FiveFingers almost straight away. As long as they don't kind of, I wouldn't say go for a run, especially if they're an experienced runner already, because the style of run, they need to adapt their technique.
Yeah.
But if someone's kind of got calcification, sort of bony spurs in their feet, they've got neurologically dropped touch, I'd say it's not for you. It's not going to work. And then everything in between. It really is, when people drop off very quickly once symptoms are better. So people that initially kind of show a lot of enthusiasm, like, yes, I want to do all the exercise, I want to get strong arches, I want to be in those shoes. As soon as their pain's gone, it's like, oh, I'm all right as I am. Kind of, they kind of don't take it any further.
Yeah.
But most people would be able to adapt quite happily to it and have a lot better, much better sort of structural relationships in their body if they kind of put a little bit of work in. I mean, it's just long-term thinking, isn't it? A little bit of work now, you reap the dividends of it later on.
Yeah, everyone wants a quick fix, don't they?
Yeah.
So I'm guessing, moving on from that question, there must be some people that come in and are curious about your shoes, and you have to say to them, yeah, no, it's not for you.
Yeah.
Well, what kind of people would you say, nah, should avoid them?
So if someone's kind of a really long-term habitual runner, that a lot of runners kind of like their stuff. They like having the £600 pair of running shoes that they've bought from Runner's World or whatever, where they've gone on the machines and they've told them that. It's hard to persuade them that £500 that you spent,
it's not going to help you very much.
So sometimes, you can just feel that you're on a losing argument, and you just think, yeah, stick with what you've got, and we'll do our best to patch up your knees, and kind of tell them what the issues are with it. Kind of, you've got the supported arch, you can't build those muscles, you go through it with them, but you're onto a losing argument with them, so you just kind of, you do what you can.
I suppose it's difficult because if you're a seasoned runner, for instance, and you've been running in shod shoes for 20 odd years and you run like marathons and things, then by putting a pair of Vibram FiveFingers on, you're asking them to start again.
Yeah.
That's a big leap.
Yeah. It'd be like asking someone to kind of lift weights when they've just taken a cast off a broken arm. Do you know what I mean? It's that you've got to sort of build up to it, because it's a completely different skill set for your feet. You don't have that. You don't have that innate strength in your foot to do that task.
No. So why don't all osteopaths wear barefoot shoes?
It's a really good question. I don't really know, because it
must stack up.
It does. It just makes so much sense. And I've talked to osteopaths about this before, and I know a few that wear minimalist style shoes, but I don't know. I think maybe people just haven't got the staying power to kind of be asked constantly, "What's that on your feet?" so I have maybe. No, I honestly don't know, because it does kind of make very good sense, but there aren't sort of many osteopaths that do.
And now, are there still osteopaths? I mean, I know orthotics have their purpose, and they're there to sort of help fix problems. But they're not a long-term solution, are they?
It depends on the problem.
Okay.
So if someone does have neurological issues with their feet, so it doesn't matter how many exercises you're going to do, you're never going to activate those muscles, then you want an orthotic. If someone's got calcification in their feet, there's bony spurs, if you try and get them to do too much, you're going to start to get stress fractures and things like that. So they want an orthotic in there. Things like big bunions and stuff like that. There's no way to kind of get that big toe activated. So, they're going to want an orthotic. But otherwise, it should be a short-term solution, just like a cast is for a broken arm. It should be there to kind of support someone through that initial stage of rehab before they start to build that muscle strength up.
Do you think they're overprescribed?
Yeah, massively.
But by osteopaths?
Yes. Yeah, just, and again, it's that short-term fix that everyone wants, kind of, they're in pain, they put an orthotic in, the pain's gone away, think any more about it until a month, 2 months, a year, whatever down the line, something else starts to hurt. And then it's like, oh no, it's got nothing to do with my feet. It's not my foot that hurts. It's my knee, it's my hip, it's my back, it's my neck, it's my shoulder, But you can look at it mechanically and think, well, that's where it started, that, and again, that little bit of work a few years ago, and you wouldn't have this problem now.
I guess from that perspective, it's a little bit about changing your level of understanding a little bit. And a lot of people think that muscles and joints and parts of the body are very isolated, whereas they are so connected.
And it's understanding that they're not connected. It's the same thing. It's your body.
Yeah.
You can't have something that's spontaneously gone wrong with the foot, because the foot doesn't work in isolation from the rest of the body. The way the whole body works has put the strain on that bit. If you've got a shoulder injury, it's the way the whole body is moving that's put the strain on that shoulder. It's not, nothing goes wrong in isolation.
Where do you think we've got to the point where, I know sort of elevated heels and tight toe boxes and all those kind of things, and on running shoes and athletic shoes and stuff have been around for about 55, 60 years. Why are we not making, as a population, a huge shift? Why isn't everyone wearing barefoot shoes? Why are we still putting these hideous things in our feet which actually damage our feet long term?
I think there's a lot of just kind of like fashion and trends, but I don't know. That can't be the whole thing, because there's lots of weird and wonderful things that become fashionable, and everyone, if I'd have worn socks and sandals when I was at school, I'd have been beaten up. But all the kids kind of, you see them wearing sort of socks and sliders now. So
Crocs. Let's go there.
Yeah, I mean, my daughter sometimes wears Crocs because whilst they're kind of very kind of thick and built up, they've got quite a wide toe box. The best thing about them is they're easy to take off quickly.
Yeah.
So, if you want them to get from the car to the beach, and then as soon as they're on the beach, the Crocs are gone and they're barefoot, they take no time for them to get out of them. So I think with kids, if you want them to spend a lot of time barefoot, then Crocs are quite a good option, because
they're forgiving, I guess, as well.
Yeah.
You could throw them around, and
that's it. The dog can chew them, you can play fetch with them, and they don't get too damaged. I don't really know why something that has a very positive effect on your general health hasn't kicked off more than it has. When I sort of first learned about them and started wearing them, I thought, you know what, I'm going to be kind of at the forefront of this trend. Everyone's going to look back and go, Jamie was the first person I saw in those, but no, it's still just me.
But having said that, like we said earlier on, there's definitely a growing understanding. There are so many more barefoot brands out there now.
Yeah, and there's I'd say kind of with a lot of brands, you're starting to see the evolution of a wider toe box, and a lot more shoes are kind of talking about zero drop. I suppose by having this extreme left wing of footwear, we're kind of pulling everyone back towards us,
Yeah. It's just going to take a bit of time. Why do you think people give up?
Just like everything, it's why do people stop going to the gym in February? It's kind of a new and exciting kind of fad when they first do it, but then I suppose it's just work. But saying that, I know a lot of people that kind of have switched to kind of minimalist footwear and stuck to it and do really well on it. So
yeah, I guess for some people, you put a pair of FiveFingers on and it feels amazing, like you did when you came away with your first pair on the train. And then to other people, that might feel like, oh my God, this is too weird.
There's a real visceral response in some people as well, like, oh, it goes between your toes. It's kind of, they're kind of horrified by it.
Yeah.
And won't look at them, but it's bizarre. But yeah, I guess it's, maybe a Marmite thing that you either really love the sensation or you don't.
I guess the answer is really to get our kids in them.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's fix them before they're broken.
Yeah, precisely. I mean, when my eldest, we first went to buy us some shoes, it's kind of, you can't get FiveFingers kind of that size, and it would be a bugger to get them on, even if you could. So we kind of did the rounds around the shoe shops, and Clark's did these crawling shoes, and they were like really wide-toed. I don't know why babies need shoes for crawling, but they had them. They almost kind of just had this thin sort of leather bottom to them. They were like perfect barefoot shoes. So she outgrew those. We went to get another pair, and they said, "Oh, she can't have those now. She's walking." I was like, Yeah, she is. They're like, oh no, she needs supportive shoes now.
Yeah.
And I could kind of almost feel the rage gradually kind of bubbling. Yeah. It's just like, oh yeah, we've been on courses. We've been, from this age, they've got to have the supportive shoes. I was like, no, I just want another pair of these, but bigger. They're like, oh, we don't make them bigger. It's like, why'd you make them for babies that are crawling that don't need shoes, but not for children that are walking that do need them?
Most common question you get asked when people stop you in the street.
Do you wear those outside? Oh no, in the street. No, in here.
Yeah, in there.
In here, they say, do you wear those outside?
Yeah.
But yeah, outside probably doesn't it hurt when you step on a stone is definitely sort of the most common one outside. But inside, yeah. Do you wear those outside? Most people sort of see them and say, oh, I like your socks.
Yeah. And yeah, that's true. Yeah, I've had that before. What's the weirdest comment you've had? You must have. I got stopped by a policeman once.
Oh, did you?
Running along there, and I was running along the road in a pair of, I can't remember what they were, but they were super thin. It was summer. And a policeman pulled up and they said, yo, sorry, sir, you need to come put some shoes on.
Well, when you're running.
I'll be running barefoot down here. I'm like, okay, well, let's have a little conversation. And you I think you got bored with me talking about them and then just strap off.
That is the way to kind of overcome it. It's just to kind of, when someone asks you, just give really nerdy, detailed explanations of them, and people could just get put
Walk away. Love that. Can you encapsulate in like a couple of sentences from an osteopath's perspective first, and then from a person's perspective second?
Yeah.
Why you wear them and what the benefits are. So if someone came in, let's just start with if someone came into the clinic and started asking questions, and then in a sort of a nutshell, you needed to say, right, this is why they're great.
Yeah. I mean, it's a question that's kind of well rehearsed at, because almost every day. Essentially, they allow your feet to work the way that your feet are supposed to work. 200,000 years of kind of having feet, and only the last couple of
100 years.
Yeah. I mean, certainly kind of the last sort of 50, 60 years of them having any sort of support in, but only kind of the last few hundred years of actually kind of wearing shoes. So before that, we were running long distances, walking long distances, existing, very, very well without kind of anything on our feet at all. We've got to accept that having some protection on your feet is a good thing. There's a lot of sharp stuff, dirty stuff that we don't necessarily want our feet to come in contact with. But if we can simulate that environment, kind of be as close to being barefoot as we can while still allowing our feet to be protected, then that's kind of the ideal.
Would your answer change if you were just talking to someone from a human being perspective, taking off your osteopath hat? I guess it's difficult to separate the two, isn't it?
It's difficult to separate the two, and most people I talk to, when I start to give an explanation, I sort of say, I'm an osteopath, I've got kind of a special interest in this.
Yeah.
If you don't want kind of a long and detailed explanation about it, walk away now. If you are, then great, strap in. But essentially, kind of, it just kind of makes sense. It's kind of just is completely logical that here's the way the foot works. Here's a set of footwear that allows it to do that. Here's how the rest of the body is completely dependent on that working the way that it should work.